Wanted to create a video discussing sleep paralysis and astral projection. I have a bunch of footnotes here, so bear with me. I wouldn't have been able to wing all this information off the top of my head without sounding retarded, so I put my thoughts down on paper to help me with the video. So astral projection, what is it? How do you do it? Why is sleep paralysis so freaky? For those who don't already know what astral projection is, it's basically the ability to project your consciousness, your spirit, or soul outside of your body. As for paralysis goes, though, I first noticed it myself a few years ago. I would wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning, unable to move. I noticed every time that this happened that it felt like a blanket, invisible blanket was placed on top of me. Like some force was holding me down. Sometimes it would even feel like this force was choking me. I didn't realize till later that this sensation is completely normal, but at the time, as you can imagine, it was one of the most horrifying things I was experiencing. It didn't stop there either. Anyone who's had an out-of-body experience knows exactly what I'm talking about. But for those who don't, when you consciously astral project or attempt to astral project, you go through a whole list of other things that can be viewed or perceived as terrifying. For instance, if you're conscious while this is happening, you can experience what seems like physical sensations, like the blankets moving, or your clothes being pulled or tugged on, and also what a lot of people report experiencing are audible hallucinations, hearing sounds around you like things shuffling around. Sometimes it can be extremely loud, and there's no lack of imagination as to some of the things you can hear. For me, I personally heard voices calling my name out loud, screaming, what sounds like growling noises, which is something that I just recently experienced. That freaked the shit out of me. Also, jackhammering noises or loud hums or buzzing sounds, even train or engine like noises, or music like you're tuning into a radio station or something like that. And it sounds like you're using your ears when you're listening to these sounds instead of something that is being generated inside your own mind. So naturally, if you're experiencing this, especially if you grew up under religious circumstances like I did, you're automatically going to think you're being possessed by an invading spirit or some type of devil, which is utter bullshit. Even though possession might be an actual phenomenon, it wasn't what was happening to me, and it's not what I think is happening to many others who are experiencing this. This was happening to me so often with such intensity that finally I had to go to the doctor in the middle of the night after I experienced this. One of the sensations I used to get a lot would be my ears ringing and vibrating so loud with such intensity that it felt like my head was going to explode. It literally felt like there was something really seriously wrong with me, so I had to get it checked out. So I go to the doctor and he tells me that I have night terrors and I'm suffering from sleep paralysis, and he basically just laughs the shit off. And I'm stuck with the bill in the story, right? But it happens again shortly after, and at this point, I'm so fucking fed up with this shit. I go to my local church right down the street from where I live and have the priest pray over me and bless water that I end up drinking, and also use to bless my home with. I'm not sure if it was the ritual act of surrender or my belief in it that made it work, but after that the experience stopped. About a year or two later, though, I'm up late randomly searching the web, and I come across this video on YouTube talking about astral projection and lucid dreams that I found interesting, called Lucidology 101 on YouTube, which I recommend you guys checking out if you haven't already. Later the same night, after watching the video, I go to bed, but I wake up to find myself slowly getting up from my body in my astral form. And I remember everything about it. I remember getting up, slowly turning to my side, and looking over my shoulder down at my body, and how surreal it felt. I remember feeling almost like the five senses that you experience in the physical world, like you experience in the astral world. It's like your senses are heightened in the astral. So I get up after I evaluate myself, and then I walk to my door, and I try to turn the knob, but my hand goes through the knob, and trying to figure out what's going on with that. So after that, I float through the door, pass through the door into my hallway, float through the laundry pantry area to my right, and float through the wall into the living room. And once I'm in the living room, I go to the front door and I try the handle again, and the handle, and my hand goes through the handle. So I float through the door, and I walk up the stairs to my front porch, and once I get there, I have no idea what's going on or what to do. So I go. So basically, once I get there, I just stare around for a minute until my body gets zapped back for some reason, and I feel this huge jolt to my body, and it's so powerful it almost hurt, like a rubber band or something being stretched and snapped back, something like that. One thing I failed to mention, though, is I noticed a few of these sensations you get when you experience sleep paralysis after I got pulled back, which for me basically was my defining moment of clarity and realization on the subject. So from that point forward, I dedicated myself to it, and I'm still learning and having struggled with it. It's like I have to rewire my brain all over again because of all that time I spent believing the experience was something evil. It's not evil. I have had some life-changing experiences, though, since then, and I wanted to, this is why I wanted to make this video, is because I wanted to share some tips, and also link you to some additional sources that have helped me get out of body. One tip is using binaural beats or isochronic pure tones within the 4 to 7 hertz range during meditation and while sleeping. That's really useful. A big one is using affirmations, which basically means telling yourself you'll have a conscious OBE before you lay down, out loud, and in your head over and over again, for a minute or two, or for as long as you want, whatever gives you the best results, depending on the person. Reality checks are really important to do as well. Pinching yourself, or looking at a clock, or clapping your hands, counting your fingers, jumping up and down in the astral. These things will often look and sound different. Try different sleeping positions. Most people spend every night sleeping in the same spot, so try something different. You might be surprised at the results you get. My first time I became aware of that, and tried it with the intent, of course, of projecting. I had one of the most bizarre experiences I have had while projecting. Also try different times. Most people, from what I've learned and from my own experiences, tend to have better luck trying to project during the morning and afternoon. One important tip would be to use the law of attraction to your advantage. So, say if you're into art, you could try painting yourself on a canvas, astral projecting. and put it above your bed where you normally lay down, like you would a dream catcher. Or if you like to write, try writing a poem of affirmations and putting it in your room where you can constantly see it, so it's constantly working on your subconscious. Also, could create a sigil if you wanted, which is basically just like a symbolic ritual. Read a lot into it too. Read a lot of literature into it. A good book I'm reading right now that gets into this is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And basically that whole book has to do with meditation, out-of-body experiences, and the after-death state. So that's a really useful and helpful book. As far as the law of attraction, though, goes, for people that are skeptic about the law of attraction, it is a reality. I had this one crazy experience when I was younger, when I used to live in Idaho. My parents took me to this lake out in the middle of nowhere called Leslie Gulch, and it was a fishing trip. And I wasn't really into fishing, and we were basically up all night fishing. And I remember sitting on the edge. I cast out my line, and I was waiting for a good just 15-20 minutes. I got super bored of it, and I remember at that point looking up at the stars for another like 45 minutes. So like I was not there for about an hour. It probably was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was just staring up, waiting for a wishing star, so I could make a wish on the star to catch a fish. Well, finally, I do end up seeing a shooting star about an hour after looking up in the sky. It's just a pretty long time to just stare at the sky, waiting for a wishing star, just so I can just wish on a falling meteorite to catch a fish. But I see a shooting star. Right after I see the shooting star, or during and after, I wish to catch a fish. And literally right after I make that wish, and as the meteorite burns up, I get this huge tug on my pole, and I couldn't believe what was going on. I was so shocked, and I ended up reeling the fish in. And I noticed that the fish had been caught on somebody else's line that my line got snagged on, and there was no bait even on the hook. That just completely blew my fucking mind. So that means I was there for an hour, waiting to see a shooting star to catch a fish. As soon as I see a shooting star, I wish to catch a fish, and I catch a fish at the exact moment that I wish upon it. And not only do I catch the fish at the exact moment I make the wish, but I catch the fish on somebody else's line that my line got snagged on the bed of the lake. So, for those that don't believe in the law of attraction, I can attest to it and say that it's a reality. It exists. But some other tips as far as what you can use to get out of body. Obviously, you want to meditate. I'd say meditate for at least an hour a day. If you can't do that because of restrictions, something is better than nothing. So I'd say you want to focus on your chakra, kundalini, and yoga. Another one is you have to ignore the fear that all those feelings and sensations create and remain calm. You don't want to become too excited either. Another one is trying what's called the wake back to sleep method, which is a fairly easy method and simple concept. Your body wakes up naturally throughout the night, and what you do when this happens is nothing. That is to say, you don't want to go back to sleep, obviously, if you're trying to project. So remain still and don't move, don't make a sound, don't open your eyelids, scratch your nose, swallow, or any of that. Keep your breathing shallow. If you do it right, you'll trick your mind into thinking your body is still asleep, and if you're successful, you'll soon after start to feel your body paralyzing and the sensations that come with it, but it's different for everyone. Also, try the wild method, which is one of the hardest in my opinions, but it's easy for some. It just depends on the person, I guess. It's called the wake-induced lucid dreaming method. And how you go about it is trying to basically trick your body into going asleep while you're still fully awake, aware, and conscious. And how you do this is by laying basically flat on your back with your arms to your side. Make sure your head is properly elevated, because a lot of people, including myself, have problems with swallowing at a certain point, so it's important that your head is appropriately adjusted to what works best for you. Your mind will soon start to send out these signals, or what's called rollover signals, to your body to test whether or not it's still asleep, by an urge to scratch your arm or move your leg, which is something I get every time I lay down and project. It can get to the point where it can feel extremely painful. So if you have a problem with like fatigue, I would suggest maybe like stretching beforehand. I noticed it's helped with me a little bit. But you want to ignore these signals, otherwise you'll like reset yourself. Probably why a lot of people suffer from insomnia, because of constant thinking, tossing and turning. Every time you toss and turn, you reset your body, so you don't want to be doing any of that shit. You don't want to move your eyes either when you're doing this, and you want to make sure your breathing is very calm and shallow. If you can withstand the torment of the mind-body awake test, then you'll set in motion the experiences of sleep paralysis. And if you can survive that, then chances are you'll have an amazing experience. Another tip is using crystals. Crystals help. Obviously, you want to have a healthy diet. You don't want to be feeding yourself a bunch of junk before going into doing something like this. Another tip many might not think to do is what I just mentioned earlier, is to stretch. Your body is usually tense almost every time you go to sleep, so you want to stretch for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Also, I heard wearing socks, because your feet get really cold. Staring at yourself in the mirror is another weird trick that creates an optical illusion of having an out-of-body experience if done properly. Don't look at yourself up close, but stand back maybe like a foot or two, and stand straight and look into your pupils from a distance, while using your peripheral vision to observe the rest of your body like you would look at one of those 3D magic eye pictures. Hold that focus and intent, and soon you'll start to notice some interesting things happen. Let's just say it's basically a quick way of tricking your mind into associating itself with the spirit. So, some people believe that mirrors are portals, and that's probably why some people during the time of death and funerals actually like cover mirrors or take them out of the house. A lot of people also wonder, the most important thing though is keeping a dream journal. The idea around that is the more awareness you give to your dreams, the more aware you'll be in your dreams, and also in your waking life. A lot of people also wonder if they encounter entities in the astral, and the answer to that is yes. So prepare yourself for that. That doesn't automatically mean there are evil beings waiting to devour your soul, and your mind shouldn't automatically take you there. My first experience with an entity, I was not expecting it at all, and it kind of freaked me out. And even though it wasn't necessarily evil, an evil experience, it just startled me. It was still startling. I was trying a different sleeping position on the floor in the living room by the couch, and I practiced my meditation and fell into a light sleep and awoke in a paralysis. Shortly thereafter, laying on my side with one of my arms above my head. My eyelids were closed, and it appeared to be dark, and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't even move my eyelids. That's how deep into paralysis I was. But I was conscious and aware of the position that I was in, and I noticed and felt this hand holding and caressing my hand, the hand that was above my head. So that kind of freaked me out. Nothing really prepares you. I mean, there are videos that will explain that, there could be a potential for you to run into entities in the astral world, but it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to experience it. And so just prep yourself for it, because there might be a possibility you could run into some spirit guides or something like that. I think the initial response is almost always fierce, and actually I ended up ending the experience as soon as I could. If you ever have an experience you're uncomfortable with, just change your breathing pattern, and you'll come out of the paralysis. But prepare yourself, because it is possible you'll have spirits around you that might want to connect with you over there. As far as possession goes, if you're worried about something like that, there are things you can do, like surrounding yourself with light, using your imagination beforehand, just as an example. One of the best things, though, about astral projection are the various benefits you get from it. As far as extrasensory perception is concerned, you definitely become more intuitive and perceptive. Depending on the individual being, you can become more empathic, clairvoyant, telepathic, precognitive, and a host of other amazing qualities. But one of the most important things, in my opinion, is becoming more self-conscious and aware. There's literally endless possibilities of what not only can be perceived, but what can be achieved. Edgar Cayce, also known as the Sleeping Prophet, is a really great example of this, as well as others. A major benefit you'll get from projecting and meditating and working on your spirituality is noticing if you're doing it right, synchronicities and deja vu, things like that. If you want to pay attention to the synchronicities happening in your life, because they mean something. They mean something important to you. Some examples of synchronicities, and this is probably like one of the biggest things of getting in touch more with yourself, is you'll start to notice these synchronicities happening like all the time, all over the place. Some examples of it are, like with myself, I've experienced like thinking of somebody and having them call you moments later, or thinking of a song while you're in the car, only to turn on the radio and have that song be playing. These are pretty common, but the most aware you become, the more aware you become of them, and the more spiritual work you do on yourself, you'll start to experience more and more complex, structured synchronicities, and they become more frequent. I've had some really bizarre experiences with that. Like, I'll be reading a book, for instance, and I'll have the TV on in the background playing, and I'll be reading a certain line and come to a couple words within that sentence that perfectly syncs up with what is being said on the TV at the exact moment, word for word. If it was just one word, I might not think too much about it, but I've had several words sync before at the exact same time. Also happens when I listen to music or like when I'm in a conversation. Or I could have a very random personal thought about something very specific, something that nobody in 1,000 years would guess, and be brought up in a conversation literally right after having thought of it. So pay attention to these things and notice how you feel when it happens, what you're doing the moment you experience it, what you were thinking before, during, and what you started to think immediately afterwards. Who was around you and how they make you feel. Basically, every time it happens, you want to try to capture the entire moment in full clarity and then reflect and meditate on its meaning. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. Astral projection shouldn't be feared. It should be explored with an open mind. In my mind, in my opinion, it's the Philosopher's Stone, the holy grail of spiritual liberation over ignorance. So thanks for watching, and I hope somebody found this video helpful. You guys take care.